Good day. My name is Meghan Brown, and I work for Nevada Department of Agriculture. I've been with the department for 5 years and have worked on noxious and invasive plant management issues over those 5 years. Thank you for joining us virtually. I'm really excited about this summit, and I hope that you all find value in the training and presentations provided. I'll keep my comments short, as I hope the bulk of the panel today will focus on a more interactive question and answer format. Chuck asked me to talk a little bit about why and how data on invasive and noxious weed species is directly tied to funding. For many of us, surveying, treating, and mapping weeds is where the rubber meets the road. Detection and treatment information needs to be accurately and timely communicated and recorded. Data is key to understanding possible vectors, land ownership, treatment type, and spatial extent. Timely data can also help inform more than just on-the-ground management decisions. It can help inform and tell the story of true need. Throughout the West, the threat of conversion of lands from healthy and diverse systems to monocultures is high. Part of that threat includes noxious and invasive plants. Many partners came together recently and created the Western Weed Action Plan, a plan that reflects the need to work collaboratively to meet the task of dealing with noxious and invasive species. 2 sections of that plan centered around data and funding. You can't have one without the other. Timely data can accurately inform management. To create action and on-the-ground management, funds need to be in place. Knowing where the species are and their threat of expansion will help articulate coordination across all levels so that county, state, and federal partners can ensure funding is established for long-term projects. Many projects need long-term funding. Using data to show past monitoring efforts, plan treatments, and survey work will help turn the ask of we need more money to we need $450,000 for the next 10 years to eradicate these 3 EDRR species in our state using these 3 particular methods with these 4 partners. Without the details, the ask is harder. The details give a full and complete picture, allowing partners to have statistics to make more informed decisions. It allows us to make strategic and long-term goals for our own agencies and create space for our partners to understand the gaps and where they might fill. It also means that when we are successful, we can show a roadmap of that success to support further work. Data can also be shared and allow other states, agencies, and local area working groups a way to create a roadmap, and possibly, and maybe even more importantly, preventing the recreation of the same old product and process. In the West, through the action plan, we are working to build those wheels and bridges to bring more money and more efficiency to treatments. This process can only be done with accurate information and that is shared between partners and agencies in a timely way. Having a single source to put this valuable data makes the job quicker and ensures everyone is on the same page. I hope that I shared some ideas of how data is connected to funding and why continuing to share and collect data in a timely way is important to everyone. I really look forward to the discussion, and thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. My name is Eagar. I am the State Weed Coordinator with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. We're going to quickly go through the Utah SIPA model that we use for our grant funding. We have about a 2-to-1 grant request to fund ratio of how much funds we have. And so we run into that problem of how do you decide which grants you're going to fund when you have 80 of them coming through the state in January. So the project rankers cannot go and actually look at the projects on the ground. So the first thing we did is we started with our EDDMapS points as our baseline that we're going to do an evaluation. All of these points have been verified by the approved verifiers to be on the ground. We use the information that is there for acres and density. Once we have all of that information, we pull that information into our Utah SIPA model and we put that out as part of our grant application. What you do in the SIPA model is you draw a polygon as to where your project is. As you do that, SIPA is doing a lot of things in the background, creating the aerial rasters. It's defining populations. It's joining those populations, it's pulling in information from our biocontrol sites and our project monitoring. Same time, it's pulling up and identifying what all the habitats are, asking the project manager to put a ranking to the various different habitat types within their polygon. It pulls in all of the species that were there for in their polygon from EDDMapS and what that distribution looks like, and has them prioritize what their focus is for that project. And then it creates maps and it creates reports and geodatabases as an end result, and then kind of prioritizes how they should attack their project based on all the answers they've given. What this does for us, and the importance of this, is we were able to run 14 state and federal indexes in the background where their polygon is. That gives us a really good idea of the value of this project, how it impacts the economic benefit, water, fire, for state and federal agencies. And it gives us an initial score to our ranking committee. And so just quick, we have various different indexes, from our species index to our livestock and sage grouse indexes that are in the background. We have elk and mule deer indexes from our sister agencies that are evaluated. Our water quality and drinking water is evaluated. We pull in multiple fire indexes, risk and threat, that an evaluation is made on that. And then we have our economic benefit, which really looks at infrastructure, roads, potential pathways for distribution. And then finally, it pulls in our defined focus areas based on the way that the statute is of how the species has been listed in the state law. Overall, it generates a QT score, and that QT score is a quality throughput. Basically, this helps our ranking committee determine which projects are of the highest value for the state of Utah, both for our agencies and federal agencies. But it also gives us a number we can present to the governor and legislators when we're trying to increase our funding, since we're at a 2-to-1 ratio on our funding. And that's just a brief overview of the SIPA. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Van Riper. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and I'm going to talk about how we're using EDDMapS in Minnesota across organizations and across different types of taxa. So we've really wanted EDDMapS to be a one-stop shop for Minnesotans who are interested in knowing where invasive species are found in the state. So while we started with working with terrestrial plants, we really expanded to also include insects, things like emerald ash borer and brown marmorated stink bug, jumping worms, forest pathogens like oak wilt, aquatic plants like the starry stonewort in the picture here, and aquatic animals like zebra mussels. We've really pushed using it across many users. So instead of having data in lots of separate places, we're all putting it into one place. So like state agencies like our Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources, and Department of Transportation are all sharing data into EDDMapS. We've got lots of great local partners like cooperative weed management areas, counties, conservation corps, contractors. EDDMapS has been a part of several community science projects like Starry Track and extension projects from the University of Minnesota. We get reports from the general public and incorporate results from researchers. So here's an example of using it for jumping worms. So jumping worms are fairly new to the state, and we're trying to understand where they're present already. And so we put together a press release and some new videos and really did a big public outreach push at the end of August. And so we can use EDDMapS to see what we've learned since that push, and make sure that as we get reports in and they get confirmed, we get them into EDDMapS so we can share that data. For aquatic invasive species, one of the tools we have is a list of infested waters and a map of infested waters, and people can easily get to those from the EDDMapS Midwest homepage. So sometimes people want to know, hey, what lakes near me have zebra mussels? This is an easy way for them to see that. Or they want to know, I'm by this lake, I want to know what invasive species are present in that lake. And so the infested waters map is a great tool for those kinds of questions. So how are we using these data? The data is helpful for informing policies and regulations. It helps in prevention efforts to know where things are so you can prevent them from spreading further. It's helpful in development of management plans, especially when you've got, say, an early detection project that goes across land ownership boundaries. It's helpful with cold hardiness information, how far north in Minnesota are these species surviving, and helps to document that species movement over time. So with that, thanks for your time, and I look forward to the chat later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Lopez, and I'm the Invasive Plants and Biological Control National Program Manager for the Forest Service and State and Private Forestry located in Washington, D.C. I've been invited to this panel to talk about how Forest Health Protection uses EDDMapS to help inform and guide our national forest health programs. I know we're all very aware of the impact invasive species have to the ecology, economy, and infrastructure across the United States. Preventing the establishment and spread of invasive species and understanding their distribution and impact across forest and grassland ecosystems is a critical component to our national forest health protection programs, specifically our invasive plants and biological control programs. Over the past several years, Forest Health Protection has worked closely with EDDMapS to help with the collection and aggregation of invasive plant data. And this EDDMapS data has become our authoritative database on invasive plants because EDDMapS has really done an incredible job working closely with federal, state, local organizations, as well as other data collection apps to collect and house this data in one location. Having this large nationwide data set has helped us to determine the distribution and impact of important invasive species, and it's really allowed us to target our management and funding more efficiently. EDDMapS has also been an amazing tool for detecting previously undetected invasive species, and this has been extremely useful for federal and state organizations with their early detection rapid response efforts. For example, there have been new state-level detections of invasive plants like the Brazilian pepper tree and Kogon grass, and these were reported to state forestry commissions and departments of agriculture for rapid response and management. Additionally, EDDMapS has been an important tool for detecting new invasive species on a national level, and some of these species include Russian mallow and Asian giant hornet that have been first reported through EDDMapS, and this has been incredibly useful for rapid state and federal responses to these invasive species. Overall, EDDMapS has been an incredibly useful tool to help guide our national forest health protection programs. We're really grateful for our partnership with EDDMapS, and we're looking forward to continuing our work together. So thank you all for allowing me to talk a little bit about our partnership, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or would like to talk more about our forest health protection programs. Thanks. Bye.
Hello, my name is Jessica Spencer. I'm with the Jacksonville District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I'm going to be speaking to you about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers EDDMapS module. In 2014, the Corps was working collaboratively with EDDMapS to develop a core module within the EDDMapS system. So the Corps provided project boundaries as well as the division and district designations for our projects so that we could incorporate those project locations into the EDDMapS mapping system. We wanted to do this so that we would have the ability to view the EDDMapS data for all the different invasive species locations in relation to our project boundaries to see what species we had within our project sites as well as those that were encroaching on our projects. If you go to the EDDMapS core module, which is located at eddmaps.org/USACE, you will see the View Distribution by Project icon on the right side of the screen indicated by the green arrow here. If you click on that, it'll bring up a list of the project names listed by division as well as district, And if you go to that list, you can select your project. In this case, we're going to select the Jim Woodruff Lake Seminole project, the second one from the top. Once you select your project, a map will be generated showing the locations of the top 15 species within your project boundaries. This information can highlight problem areas within your boundaries or areas that may need more intensive survey efforts. The information can also be used to help prioritize treatment areas. At the bottom of the map, there is also a list that includes all of the species, not just those top 15 that are contained within the boundaries, and you can click on those individual records to see where they're located. So if there is a species of concern, you can kind of zoom in and determine where that species is located within the project. But this information can be used to help the land manager get an idea of what the problem areas are on their site, as well as, species that may be contained in just one area of the project, that they may be able to have a containment strategy so that they prevent it from spreading into other areas of the park. You can also look at the species records where there may only be 1 or 2 records within the project site, and those may offer opportunities to do an early detection rapid response and potentially eradicate that species from the site. It could also indicate species that need more intensive survey efforts. In addition to seeing the species that are within our project boundaries, we also wanted to detect the species that were in a buffer zone surrounding the projects. So in this case, we're looking at the species that are within 10 miles of the project boundary. This information will allow the project managers to detect species that are starting to encroach on their projects and develop strategies to prevent them from becoming established on the project site. That's just a brief overview of our core module, but if you do have any further questions, you can contact me at the information below. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Art Roybal. I work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Vero Beach, Florida. I'm a member of the Florida Ecological Services Field Office. Today, I'd quickly like to give you some information how we've used EDDMapS data for decision-making, monitoring, and as a reporting tool in South Florida. Now, you've all heard of the movie Snakes on a Plane with Samuel L. Jackson, a real thriller back then. Well, we've had the sequel to this movie for quite some time. It's called Pythons in a Park. As you know, the Burmese python has multiplied and spread throughout the Everglades, eating or consuming, preying on the native mammal population, and also spread outside the Everglades now. Well, back in 2007-2006 timeframe, the South Florida Water Management District petitioned the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to list the Burmese python as an injurious wildlife species under the Lacey Act. Well, back then we decided to take a look at the importation of just constrictor snakes in general. As you'll see here, Python regius, which is the ball python, and boa constrictor were the top 2 constrictor snakes being imported into the United States from 1999 to 2010. We decided to concentrate more so on the large constrictor snakes, which would be a major problem to native wildlife, and they have been a major problem, as you know, with the Burmese python. These are a few of the pythons and anacondas that we considered and evaluated. Now back then, EDDMapS in a different format, as you'll see here, was very valuable to determine where these snakes have been seen and where they've been captured. And here I just have the Burmese python points on the map engaged, but it gives you an idea of distribution throughout the state. Now, as I said, the Fish and Wildlife Service conducted a injurious wildlife evaluation of the constrictor snakes, the large constrictor snakes. But prior to that, the USGS conducted a risk assessment where the Burmese python, southern African python, northern African python, boa constrictor, and yellow anaconda were evaluated as high risk, with the other anacondas and the reticulated python as medium risk. species. So after evaluation, the Fish and Wildlife Service listed the anacondas, as you see here, and the pythons as injurious wildlife species back in 2012 and 2015. In addition, back in 2009, the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, also known as Everglades SISMA, put together a priority list of invasive animals. As you'll see, the large constrictor snakes were listed as of concern or priority, but also a ibis. An ibis known as the sacred ibis was at the top of the priority animal list. One of the reasons for this is that this bird is known to be predatory to native wildlife, their young and their eggs. Here we have a sacred ibis that was fitted with a satellite tracking device by the USDA Wildlife Services. This bird was targeted for early detection, rapid response activities, and all of the satellite tracking, we were able to have these birds lead us to additional birds that were removed. And just recently, one was found in the Vero Beach area through reporting in EDDMapS and I've got one.org, or I've got one phone number. And the additional sacred ibis was removed from this water treatment facility, which is a haven for birds in Vero Beach, Florida. So that was a success of the reporting system and also just the network that has been formed to respond to these sorts of observations. Here again, we have the EDDR, large lizards that we are using EDDMapS data for to track their movement and reporting, the Nile monitor lizard and the Tegu lizard, which is very much of concern these days. It's spread up the peninsula, also into Georgia. So just wanted to say we love the EDDMapS format. We also encourage folks to use the I've Got One app to report invasive species. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I'd like to invite our 6 panelists from this session, Data for Funding and Decision Making, to go ahead and pop on your cameras so we can see you. All right. Okay, so first question for you all, and this is a question for everyone. Are you using the EDDMapS Pro version that we learned about yesterday, or are you using the regular EDDMapS version? Or I know I've got one and we've got Wild Spotter. So which one are you using, or do you just use a suite? And whoever wants to kick us off.
I can go ahead and start. So in Minnesota, when we first started rolling EDDMapS out, we started with the Great Lakes Early Detection Network app, which is the EDDMapS app, geared towards the Midwest and Great Lakes region, because it's so simple to use. And for a lot of, say, Department of Natural Resources staff or other agency staff, it really, that fit just fine. If you're wanting to mark points, get photos attached, get things into the database, that's just fine. So a lot of our staff, that's what they use. Sometimes if people are wanting to do more revisits, that's pushing them to use EDDMapS Pro and getting trained in on that. Also, if people are wanting to do more extensive mapping of polygons in areas that don't have cell connectivity, that's the other thing that can push people towards EDDMapS Pro.
So this is Jessica. I personally do a lot of bulk uploading because we have, large data sets that we're collecting with different means that then we want to share with the EDDMapS database. So a lot of ours ends up being bulk uploads, but I do have the EDDMapS Pro version on my devices. So if I'm out doing other events with one of our SISMA groups, I often use that to report some of those kind of volunteer efforts.
Yeah, and so in Utah, it's kind of 3 different ways. We have the EDDMapS Pro, and a lot of people are using the Pro version. And then we have people a lot of the counties have an ArcGIS system. And so they're doing it through Esri and then doing a bulk upload. So I would say it's either through the Pro for some for using West, and then the website where they're doing bulk upload.
I'll jump in for Nevada. I think it's a mixed bag as well. I think a lot of our staff use EDDMapS Pro for obvious reasons, doing or associated with treatments or doing revisits. And so those features are really helpful. But I think when we interact with the public, it's traditionally been EDDMapS West, but just using EDDMapS in general when getting people involved. And then as they become more engaged, encourage them to use those features in EDDMapS Pro.
Can I just add one more thing about using EDDMapS? Before EDDMapS, we had a lot of data in our GIS system, and there'd be reports of a particular species, and it was made from an intern from 15 years ago, and no one remembered how good that intern was at recognizing a particular species or not. So one thing we've really liked about EDDMapS is having those photos attached. So even if that person has moved on, you've got that photo with that record, and we found that's really helped people's confidence in the record.
We have two questions that are a little bit similar. Based on your experience, what changes, improvements, or new features to EDDMapS would be helpful to you? And kind of a secondary question that goes with that is there anything in the works for kind of partnering a species ID app with EDDMapS or EDDMapS Pro? So kind of a two-parter there, but is there anything that through your work you've thought, man, it'd be great if it did this, or it'd be great if it did that?
Well, one of the things that I know I've discussed with Chuck in some of our steering committee meetings that we've had is being able to import specific project locations. And so, I know with our core module, we tried to add most of our core projects, but those were specifically core owned properties, not necessarily core projects. So our project boundaries, those could be on partner properties. It varies a lot. So just being able to import a file that has those boundaries that you're interested in, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, let me chime in for a second. There's quite a few things that we've been in development over the years. So adding photos, which was covered yesterday, and being able to use the KML files, all of these things are developing. One of the things right now from I guess my perspective is getting the dashboard, some new features to the dashboard so that I can run specific reports that are unique to Utah or unique to a county. A lot of that feature is there through the advanced search, but it'd be nice when I'm, meeting with legislators or whoever, that I can quickly go to my dashboard and I can display information very quickly that covers the entire state. And that's really the power of having all that data and having it collected, is you can do an advanced search, set up that profile in your dashboard, and then quickly get the information and tell a really good story visually and have it display as a map instead of trying to load ArcGIS and go through, shape files to get all that information. So I know we're working on that. That will be one of the things that will be added. Well, I'm hoping Chuck will add that in the next little bit, because from my position, that would be very helpful.
I'd like to just jump in. I had hoped Chuck would pop in on this, but with regards to adding, basically what they're asking for is image recognition. So you take a picture of something and it gives you an idea of what the suggestions might be for what's in that photo. We have talked about it at length. It is something we want to happen. What we end up needing is a project, funding, things like that to get that started, and someone specifically to kind of work on that project. We have talked with iNaturalist to kind of with some idea of how they ended up doing their image recognition. Of course, they're not going to, give us their image recognition program, but we have an idea, and we have talked with some experts about how this could happen at some point. So it is something we're looking to do at some point.
Awesome. Thank you for chiming in, Rebecca. Really appreciate you. Okay, let's chat for just a minute. Can you provide examples of any time that EDDMapS detected a previously undetected invasive species in your area, and have EDDMapS alerts triggered rapid response on those types of species? I see Jessica shaking her head, so maybe we could start there. And I see big smiles around. So how do you use EDDMapS for early detection and to trigger that rapid response? Go ahead, Jessica.
So I'm also one of the co-chairs for our local SISMA group in Northeast Florida, Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area. And so as part of that, I have my EDDMapS alerts set up for our 5-county region here in Northeast Florida, but I also have alerts that are set up for some of those species that are sort of slowly moving north up the peninsula of Florida. So I've gotten alerts for old world climbing fern, which is a big concern. It's very heavy down in South Florida, but we have the northernmost populations now up in Jacksonville where I'm at. So that came in through an EDDMapS alert. I saw it come in through the email, reached out to the partners, got the agencies that were involved with those lands involved. So those alerts have been very helpful in those examples. Also, the example that was mentioned earlier for the Brazilian pepper in Georgia, I was part of that alert as well. And, we were in coordination with the folks, our partners just across the border up in Georgia, providing them with the treatment recommendations and, how best to tackle that problem. So it is nice to have that network of a response, so that when those alerts come in, the people to reach out to. And that's sort of a critical aspect of that EDRR response, but definitely having those alerts set up and being able to target them to the species or areas that you're interested in, I think has been very useful.
Thank you. Other examples?
Well, in South Florida, specifically in the area of our office, which is Vero Beach, we've had alerts of tegus, Nile monitors, and being that I'm a first responder in Indian River County, I've gotten calls through the network, and we've had opportunities to go out and actually observe Nile monitors and actually kill a few. So that has been a very successful way of early detection, rapid response, and hopefully stemming the spread of some of the species in the area. So
we had an example where our Department of Transportation found the first known population of pale swallowwort in Minnesota. And then a TNR person also found pale swallowwort. Because both of them put them into EDDMapS, it was quite clear that this was a connected population. And our Department of Agriculture and our Conservation Corps were involved too. So it was able to be a coordinated effort across boundaries, because those putting it all in EDDMapS made it clear this is all a connected location.
The other thing, just to tag on to that.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Just to tag on to that, I think the other thing about the EDDMapS alert system is that because it is going to a broad swath of people, it's not just coming to one person, that does kind of trigger that more coordinated response. So it's not just on that one individual to find out who's responsible and reach out. And so having the alerts going out to sort of a wide audience also helps with that coordination.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and can I chime in on this one too? It also, so we've had a couple in Utah just this last year. 2 new species went off our watch list and were first identified. One coming up from Arizona, the other one coming in from Colorado is what we think. But what it does for us is not only does it notify the county through that email who has that authority to go check it out, but it notifies us at the state. So it can quickly go out with multiple notifications that are happening once that's put into EDDMapS. It triggers on my end that I need to look at multiple funding sources. So I don't have to wait for a grant opportunity to happen to go and treat that. I have a pool of money that's available when we get an invasive EDRR species that enters our state. So then I can automatically start calling CWMAs and other groups to say who's going to put boots on the ground. I have the money available to go do it. So, the old way of, it takes months for that information to get to not only to people, but to the money associated with the treatment. EDDMapS has really streamlined that because that's all done through notification. And it instantly, multiple people are working on different avenues, to respond to it. So it's really good.
Well, thank you, Erin. You kind of actually answered the next question. So you were reading my mind a little bit there, which is to share examples of times that EDDMapS data has influenced funding decisions. Okay, so to our panelists, can you share some examples when you have used EDDMapS data to directly influence funding or to directly influence legislation or regulation or policy for invasives, obviously?
Yeah, I'll kind of start. So, I'm running a national program. And so, for a lot of these things, what's done boots on the ground stuff, I'm not really a part of, but we're definitely using the data for, the distribution maps, the occurrences to work with our state and local partners. So as a Fed, a lot of, for example, the invasive plant program that we run out of Forest Health Protection, a lot of those dollars are given to the states and then spread to the local CWMAs and other organizations. And so the information that's collected from EDDMapS really helps us to get regional perspectives and also national perspectives of the species that we should be focusing on. So yeah, it's definitely been a really useful tool, and especially considering, the other mechanisms that are utilized to look at the distribution and occurrence of other invasive like insects and diseases. Invasive plant, getting that data is a little bit more difficult, without like utilizing aerial surveys and remote sensing. These are other techniques that we use for insects and diseases. EDDMapS has really been a great aggregator of data that will kind of be hard for us to gather otherwise. So it's definitely been useful in helping determine where funding should go.
I can give a couple of examples in Nevada, if you don't mind. And I think not only is it more funding, but synergy of funding. I think to Erin's comments about funding sources and availability, when we know where things are, we are allowed, and knowing the threats of those particular species, we're able to be very targeted with who we can have as partners or grow partners to increase funding for particular projects. And so I think local needs and local effects are really important, but as also knowing those threats and how we can identify those partners. And so we've been able to work with, HOAs to be able to explain, the devaluing of property if noxious weeds are going on there. There might be a wildlife habitat concern, a pollinator concern. I mean, there's lots of different things. And so I think being able to have that information easily available and really the ability to articulate that very easily graphically and those sorts of things really helps allow us to connect with those people very easily and in a broad array of partners, I guess. I didn't articulate that very well. I'm sorry, but I hope got the point across.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Any other comments on that before we wrap up this session?
I also had an example as far as the regulatory listings. So in Florida, we use EDDMapS data in addition to, a number of other sources as part of the Florida Invasive Species Council Plant Listing Committee. And so we use that data to document, where the plants are occurring in the state. We also have used the data to support a regulatory listing of the beach vitex, which was in very limited locations in Florida. So, having that EDDMapS data to document just the rarity of the species and then showing in the Carolinas how extensive it was, what a problem it could be, really helped to influence the decision makers to go ahead and list that on our state prohibited list.
Thanks, that's a great example.
Hey, Elizabeth, one last thing. I mean, in Utah, yeah, it drives a lot of our funding, which has already been talked about. It also influences how species are listed and how it fits into our statute. One of the other things that has been mentioned is I use it and our inspectors use it for our weed-free forage gravel. When we get a call that someone wants their field or gravel to be inspected, it's easy to be able to pull it up and say what's near it. That gives them an idea of what to look for when they actually go. Because if you're doing an inspection on 3,000 acres, you can see where points are of different species. And then depending on the time of year, you would know at what stage of growth that would be and what you're looking for. And so you know, you can take this into the organic and into the seed program. Also, there, you know, it's very helpful for anyone who is regulating any kind of a produce or a product that is grown to know where these species are. And the only way to do it is to have some sort of a mapping program that you can quickly pull it up and go, okay, these have been verified. We know that they're there. And depending on what action you're doing for your job, it just gives you information before you get there of potentially what you might be walking into. So we use it in a lot of ways, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Definitely a large benefit for the Certified Weed-Free Products program. Okay, that wraps up our time for this panel. I want to thank each and every one of our panelists. Greatly appreciate the information you shared and the dialogue today. You know, based on the poll, 46% of folks that are attending right now are using EDDMapS data in their decision making. And I think that you have illuminated a lot of different ways that EDDMapS data can be used, not just for decision making, but to improve program efficacy and to, you know, create partnerships and improve funding and those sorts of things. So I really appreciate all the great examples that you gave. For those of you that answered the poll that you don't know how to view the data, you don't know how to query the data, please go to NASMA's YouTube channel in a week and watch the videos from yesterday because they went through all that, and reach out to our friends at UGA and get in touch with us at NASMA, and we can help to get you connected to the folks that can train you up.